Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of She Knows Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel and getting into the chat and letting me know how you guys are thinking and feeling. I have deluded people with me today. I have a poll up. We were late. Go vote. Why do you think we were late today? Was it?
I think it's because of just in a coffee. Personally, I don't know. I don't know. I weren't late this time, people. I was here. I was here from what was the time now? It's 11 past 4. I think I was here from like 3:55, folks.
Yeah. You guys
Who are you
vote.
gonna believe?
You know what? You guys know what's real. I'm always on time, right?
Same.
Yeah.
I was
So
on time somewhere.
yeah. So I wanted to just have a little chitty chat. You guys know, like, we're not really doing that much in the transfer window. And so unfortunately, like, we can't, there's not gonna be like a big, like, oh my God, who are we gonna get? Blah, blah, blah. We'll talk a little bit about Callum Wilson. But primarily on the show, what I want to talk about is the midfield, because that's where the majority of stuff is going on. Partey is back in training, and there's been a lot of discourse around whether or not Declan Rice is hindering Arsenal, holding us back, blah, blah, blah. So I wanted to get your opinion on that, and obviously the chat. And also, we're going to talk a little bit about Smith Rowe, because
Who?
Smith Rowe,
Oh no, I can't hear you.
Emil,
Okay.
our number 10.
Big
So
boy, bad
we're going to talk
Emil
about
Smith,
that as well. You guys, so get in the chat and let me know how you guys are thinking and feeling, and where you guys are watching in from. I always like to know where you guys are from and how you guys are feeling. It's rainy here in California, which is gross. I don't do rain. What's the weather like out there? Is it still really cold?
Bro, it's cold, man. It's January in England, man. We ain't got no nice weather here. It's freezing. It's freezing. To be fair, it's a bit more warmer today, but it's cold, man. We ain't got no rain though. But now that I said that, it probably is gonna be. To be fair, against Palace, it was raining goals, so it keeps up the theme, man. If I'm honest.
Yeah,
So,
you
yeah,
guys have
man,
like
weather's
the
horrible.
worst weather ever, and now this is like mimicking London weather, and I'm just like, disgusting. Graham says, I blame DG. Yeah, exactly. Probably showing that wonder goal of his again. Only kidding, DG. Oh, I actually am working on. You've seen it. I'm gonna actually put that in my intro. I'm gonna
What,
have
that
it.
penalty?
Yeah. No, it was more than one penalty. It was 3.
Only one of them looked decent, man. The rest were a bit shaky. No, I'm
Oh
saying.
my goodness, you're a hater. But yeah, I'm working on my intro where I'm gonna have me doing stuff. I'm actually gonna find stuff for when I actually like played for real. But yeah,
What
let's see.
position did you play?
Midfield, like
And you
defense.
don't like Smith Rowe?
I was like a
I hear it.
defensive midfielder. So
Also, now I know why you don't like Smith Rowe. You didn't have the
a
glee and
la
whatnot.
a la Vieira, a la Vieira.
Did
Like,
you pass the ball forward?
of course I passed the ball forward. No, I did pass the ball back a lot. I did. I'm not even gonna lie. I would get it, pass it off to other people. And tons of yellows, quite a few reds. Yeah.
Bro, sounded
Yeah.
like me.
Yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't great, but I had a good time. Mr. Happy says Partey time. Jagoon says Callum Wilson. I'll cry if this happens. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way. Obviously, like, Arsenal are being offered players. I think that's kind of how that link has come about. Callum Wilson is available because Newcastle need to sell. They've been trying to sell Almiron. They've also kind of tried to sell Kieran Trippier as well. And so now Callum Wilson is kind of like the next person that they're looking to try to sell for about 18 million. And I said Manchester United, Chelsea, and Arsenal have all been notified of his availability. What are your feelings on this link? We haven't really looked like we're doing anything. Callum Wilson is a decent striker. I would say he's better than Eddie. I feel like I'm comfortable saying that. How do you feel about this link? Is this something that you would want to see the club do, or not so much?
I mean, I doubt the credibility of the link just because, as you said, this has been a quiet January period. If anyone's had something close to excitement in terms of outgoings, probably is Newcastle. Gomares and Isak were half-heartedly linked with moves away. Trippier 1 minute it's Bayern Munich, then it's not. Almiron 1 minute he's going Middle East, then he's signing new deals. And apparently Wilson had interest from Thingy, from Atletico Madrid. 18 million for what is projected for a 31-year-old. I think it would go against Arsenal's project and our logic and doesn't really scream long term. Again, Wilson isn't the first on my list. And when you look at the 3 clubs you mentioned, it's clear to see why he's been linked, because they all need a striker of various degrees. I wouldn't be against Wilson on loan to tie us through to the end of the season. I don't think Newcastle will go for that. If you could get him on loan from now till May, I wouldn't necessarily be for it and up in arms, but I wouldn't necessarily be against it. Respectfully to Eddie, like you said, he's better than him. He's got more of a proven pedigree. You know, probably bank on him to probably score a lot more goals than Eddie, but I very much doubt it. I don't think it makes sense, and I don't think it will happen, man. But only on loan in theory. I wouldn't want that permanently.
Yeah, probably not permanently. I mean, he's a backup striker. For us, like that's the role that he would fill. I feel like it wouldn't really help us that much if, like, let's say we kept Jesus and we moved Eddie on and had Callum Wilson as the backup. Like, I don't feel like that helps us at all. So it'd be like a short-term thing. I think he's a good player. The injuries stand out, as like, okay, well, how many injury-prone strikers do you need? And so, yeah, I don't put a lot of stock in this rumor. If we were kind of like firing on all cylinders, and all we really needed to get over the line is probably just like a striker just to get us over the line alone, like you said, I would probably do it. But I feel like that's not really where we're at. Not him for sure. So yeah, don't need to put too much stock into that. Let's see what you guys are saying. Dr. Who Dan says, good for 10 goals. Yeah, but Jesus gets more goals normally. Lucas says he is a cold finisher, but he never plays. And that's the thing is I feel like if you put him in our team, he would score goals. But I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like we should be aiming higher.
Should be aiming high. Should be
We
aiming
should be aiming
100% higher. But as you know, the language has come out of the club, or better yet, in the papers. We're not going to get any of these big ticket items in January. These Osmans, these Vlahovic's, these Ivan Tonys, and so on and so forth, man. And even then, like, if we was to get Callum Wilson, obviously, like you said, with his injury and whatnot, and I'm not going to say a striker isn't needed, but then I would doubt really the rhetoric of the club. Now, what the media are saying and what the club are actually doing, as you know, and everyone in the chat, are two different things. But all we hear is that, it's a defensive body on loan. It's a defensive body on loan. So if we go and get Wilson, it kind of goes against what we've heard. So it does make you kind of struggle to understand what exactly we're doing. But yeah, man, I just want to be able on the 31st of January to say we signed someone. Probably not going to happen, but it is what it is.
If that's all that, like, if somebody was like, all you can have is Wilson or nothing else, would you take it?
I mean, beggars can't be choosers. I wouldn't necessarily be against it because, in theory, if you could stay fit, I think there's something that you could do, Wilson, to help us. But I don't think it moves the needle. I don't think it gets us closer to Liverpool City. I don't think it does its bit to kind of salvage the season of our unlikely chances of winning the Premier or the Champions League. So I'll have it because it's better than nothing, but does it move the needle? Does it make us stronger? Of course, if he signs for the club and in the months he's playing, he does well, he gets called up to the England squad, great. I wouldn't be necessarily against it, but yeah, man, you're left wanting a bit more, if I'm completely honest with you.
Yeah, and I'm not against like little stopgap type signings. I just feel like with Arsenal, stopgaps end up keeping us from doing other things, and so I'm like, okay, we can probably skip over this. It's fine. But yeah, I see some people will probably take him. A lot of people are saying he's injury prone. Some people are saying it's like signing Weghorst. I don't think it's quite like signing Weghorst. I feel like that's a little bit. I feel like Callum Wilson
Wilson probably trades a bench. He's just going to sit on a bench in North London rather than Newcastle, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you know how I feel about our striker situation. I think it's, without being dramatic, but also being dramatic, it's dire. Like, I don't think. Did you see that that graphic that came out that said that it was like the top XG underperformers list for 2020?
Arsenal players.
Yeah, and I was just like, that's how bad it is. I feel like I don't think Jesus is like a terrible player or anything like that. I actually think he's a top quality player. But when we're talking about putting the ball in the back of the net, I don't think you could have the combination that we have in center forward is pretty dire. Am I being over dramatic with that?
No, because I think you're bang on the money. And on another hand, I mean, we spoke about this on your last stream. I can't think we can be surprised because I think Jesus is a quality player. But if there's one mediocre aspect of his game, it's putting the ball in the back of the net. Eddie Nketiah has shown on occasion he can do it. Doesn't have a strong pedigree. Saka's lost his shooting boots. Odegaard and Martinelli last year had their first real standout campaign, in which Mikel Arteta a few weeks ago basically said that. So when I see all the touches in the box, but we're not exactly putting the ball in the back of the net, when you talk about XG, it's how we've assembled the squad, isn't it? You know, again, are we maximizing our tools at our display? That's another question. But at the same time, do we have the right tools for the job? Which is another question, which I can't
Yeah.
say them statistics surprise me.
Yeah, they definitely don't like I feel like seeing it, I was like, wow. So yeah, I definitely was feeling this that it's bad. Like it's bad. Like we have all three of the players that we would have play up front literally do not score goals. Like not anywhere near what they should be. So it's dire. But do I anticipate Arsenal pulling out 18 million and getting Callum Wilson on like a stopgappy type of thing? No, I think they'll do what they usually do and go for the long-term vision or whatever. How much better do you think Callum Wilson is than Ivan Toney? Or
Callum
or
Wilson can't talk to Ivan Toney, man.
you think it's
Callum
that
Wilson
big of a
can't talk
gap
to Ivan
between the
Toney.
two of them?
I like Wilson. He can't talk to Ivan Toney. His general, and I like Wilson. I think his general play is decent. I don't think he's got the strongest pedigree of goals, but I like the way he plays. I actually think he'll be able to press well, pause with what Arsenal are doing, but you can't. Like, Ivan Toney's there, man. Ivan Toney's here. You're there. Can't talk to him, man, really, if I'm honest with you. But I like Wilson. I just think Toney's a much better player. I think Toney plays a lot better than I like. One thing I do like about Wilson that Toney has is he's not a nice guy. Like he'll elbow defenders and carry on a certain sort of way. But I'd say with Wilson, it's a case of durability. If I'm honest, like how fit are you going to be? Which is why I'm on it. I'm on it. If you could get on a loan, if we signed him, which as you said quite well, I don't think we're going to get him because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't tie into the long term vision. But yeah, man, Toney's up here for me. Wilson's slightly below, man. Really, Ivan Toney's a big dog for him. If I'm honest.
It's interesting because, like, okay, so like Callum Wilson has 7 goals and 1 assist this season and 14 appearances, which is more than anybody in our team has. And then last season, he had 18 goals and 5 assists. I wonder how many of those are non-penalty goals because I'm just like, listen, you're telling me Toney is this much better. I don't know if it's the gap is that big.
Since when was scoring penalties a problem?
I didn't say it was a problem.
I know, but like a couple of times on your streams, you say this. Like,
I'm not saying it's a problem.
do you know how big? Do you know how big your bollocks paws have to be to take penalties in this Premier League? Like,
but I feel like Callum Wilson probably had some penalties too in there. All I'm saying is that you're talking the gap is this big. Yeah. I'm not thinking that gap. The gap is. I feel like the gap is really just like
I'm probably exaggerating a bit, but I think Wilson makes some good runs off the ball. I think his general play is good. I think him and Ivan Toney are in a positive way nasty, but I think Toney's just got a lot more to his game. He can run in behind, he can drop deep, he can work the channels, he can score free kicks. He's on scoring penalties. He's probably a couple of years. Well, he is a couple of years younger. I just think he's better than him, if I'm honest with you, man.
Yeah. I think this is a good comment. Wilson is a killer in front of goal, and Toney's game is better overall. Yeah. Which I feel like a lot of us can see with our eyes. That being said, I don't think the gap is as big as you're making out to seem. But I know you want Toney, so
I mean, you didn't rate Smith Rowe, and now it's happening.
We like different types of players. C. Walters says, "I'd prefer Wilson to Toney." Michael says, "Forget Toney. Arsenal is not a philanthropic club." Okay, Dr. Who Dan says Solanke from Bournemouth more potential than Wilson. I don't know. I feel like Arsenal do want an English striker. If they're going to get one, it's probably going to be Toney because of his overall game is better. But 18 million for Callum Wilson would be something that, like, if Arsenal could do that and it not change the whole summer plan, then. But everything that we do changes the summer plan, so I can see why maybe they wouldn't do it. Now, listen, Thomas Partey is back in training. I have a suspicion that he's been back in training for a minute, but Arsenal.
I don't think you're alone with that. I think we've all said that, yeah, man.
Yeah, Arsenal couldn't show him in training before Ghana went out of AFCON, but I think he's been training for a minute now. That's just on suspicion. That's not anything like known. But how big of a boost is that for Arsenal? The midfield has been a constant conversation. What are your feelings on that? Is he somebody that could take us from where we are now to winning trophies? Is it that big of a boost?
I mean, No, because I don't think Thomas Partey alone can win us a Premier League or Champions League and salvage stuff. But I do think it's a great option. I think a lot of us Arsenal fans would love to see Declan Rice, Thomas Partey, and Odegaard in midfield. Obviously, he's a fantastic player. A lot, and I'm sure we're going to get onto it. A lot of discussion and discourse has been said about Declan Rice's passing. Partey, a bit like Jorginho, they're better than Declan Rice at that aspect. So it'd be great. But for me personally, while I want Partey back and I'm happy, we've seen this movie before, Jess. Are we expecting a different ending? Forgive me for sounding a bit pessimistic, but is he going to get fit and able to stay fit for the duration of the season? And also Thomas Partey, like, he's not played that much football. I hope he's been training for a while and he's ready to hit the ground running. But if Partey plays against Nottingham Forest, how long is it? Because we're going to have to give him that time. How long will it take him to show his quality and be really up to speed with stuff? So I'm definitely happy for Partey to be fit. I definitely welcome it. Defo makes us a bit better. But yeah, to answer a bit of your question, does him alone win us a Prem or a Champs? Nah, man. Nah. But we need
Yeah.
our players. We need our
I don't
players. But
Yeah, I don't think it's the same as like when De Bruyne came out there for Man City and instantly you're like, okay, they're probably just gonna win. Like it's that simple. Like he's one of the best midfielders that we've seen in the Premier League. So that's not quite the same as bringing in Thomas Partey, or Thomas Partey coming back. That being said, having a more balanced midfield than we have had for the majority of the season will obviously give us benefits. Like it definitely will. I feel like I think our best midfield three so far, or basically so far, because Thomas Partey hasn't played that much, has been Jorginho, Declan Rice, and Odegaard. Just because you have more progressive passers, you're not putting Declan Rice under all the pressure to do all the progression. It alleviates some of the pressure on Zinchenko to do all this work. And so it's more like what we were doing last season. So taking out Jorginho and adding Thomas Partey obviously gives you more benefits because I think it's obvious. Like it's Thomas Partey is better than Jorginho. I don't think there's much of a conversation there. Now, I agree with you. Like my biggest fear with this is that he'll get injured again. He tends to get into like the muscle injury cycle where he comes back and then gets a muscle injury, then goes away, then comes back. And so against Forest, I don't anticipate him starting from the beginning. I feel like some people will be like disappointed, but I feel like we'd much rather have him going into the later months than like right now, if that makes sense. So Arsenal probably will like ease him back into the fold. But we've struggled in the midfield for one reason or another, whether it's maybe Declan Rice is taking too long to release the ball. Maybe he's a little bit too pragmatic. I don't know if Arteta's telling him to do that or not. Havertz hasn't really, the Havertz thing in midfield hasn't really, it's it's not really there.
very hit and
So
miss.
yeah, it's hit and miss. Like,
More misses than hits.
yeah, exactly. Like in the perfect settings, it's okay, but it never really bangs the way that I feel like Arteta anticipated it to. I don't know if that was Timber was supposed to be there or not, but this whole idea of like Zinchenko being in midfield and pushing up and Havertz playing this free role running into the box, it hasn't really come off. I feel like the way maybe Arteta anticipated. Maybe he did. I don't know. I don't know what Arteta was thinking with that, but
Let's
I
hope
am
he don't play Partey right back when he's back fit again, eh? Which I don't think he'll explore.
I don't think he will do that.
I don't think we're at the time in the season. And that's the only thing with Partey, because against City when he played, which is probably one of the only times I can recall him playing, the rhetoric around him was obviously we're kind of wrapping him in cotton wool. So I don't know if it's
Yeah.
a Partey thing, if it's how the club's handling him, if Partey's just at that period in his career. He's a big boost to our aspirations. But for me, it's just, can you stay fit? Like, and I hope he
Yeah.
can stay fit.
Like Shema saying, why jump on the negative? Let's appreciate that he's fit. I don't feel like it's jumping on the negative. I feel like we've both spoken about the boost that it could be, but I feel like ignoring the fact that he spent a lot of time on the sideline is setting yourself up a little bit. I feel like I would not be surprised if he got injured again. And I don't feel like anybody should be if it were to happen. Now, I hope he can stay fit. Like last season, he was able to stay fit for a long time.
33 games, 40 and all
Yeah,
come.
which was the first time in a lot since he's been at Arsenal where he's maintained that level of fitness. I think a lot of that was because he didn't play in the cups. We're not in any domestic cups, so all he would have to do is focus on the Premier League and the Champions League, which would be a boost. But I do think ignoring that would be a little bit disingenuous. I feel like even with Tommy, when he comes back, he looked good for Japan the other day. When he does come back, the first thing I'm going to think is please stay fit, because he's been injured. It's a
How is
part.
that negative then?
I think it's just like,
You hear what you want to hear, really, but I don't see how that's negative. What you or me have said.
yeah,
Just being honest.
I think it's just like I feel like people just don't want to hear like the full thing with Thomas. Like I feel like
Or
they just
anything,
want,
guys. No.
yeah, they just want to hear he's a elite player and he's almost like Rodri and all this kind of stuff. But the main reason why he's not in the same category or even in the same planet as Rodri is because he doesn't stay fit. That's
He's a
you
lovely
know,
footballer, but
yeah, he's
the
great.
best
Like,
quality you can have is being fit in it. And
yeah,
I don't think it's all Thomas Partey. I think maybe a bit of it's the club, but simply put, it doesn't matter. Like the best quality you can have is being available in it. And
agreed.
Thomas Partey, Tierney when he was here, Tommy Yasu, slyly to a degree, Zinchenko, and even Gabriel Jesus. Injuries happen, but it does have a knock-on effect in our team.
Yeah. Just a harmless potato says it's not only Havertz. Odegaard is better playing the 10 than a double 8. Rice does not prefer to play as the only DM. The whole midfield has lost its balance. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that if we just kind of played, it's more about the balance than the quality of the player? Like if we could just get that balance right with like almost like a double pivot and Odegaard a little bit higher, that would solve a lot of our midfield problems per se.
I disagree with the Rice playing alone as a lone DM, but generally and about Odegaard really, because I think he's got scope to play as an 8. But I do think there is a lack of balance. I think he's right in that regards, and this is why I don't really blame Havertz. I think when you look at Kai, I think he adds a bit of physicality. He does put a shift in. We're in dangerous territory when we praise players for that. But I have to look at the man that I rate highly, Mikel Arteta. You've assembled this squad. Kai Havertz and Granit Xhaka are two very different players. I'm not here to crusade Kai Havertz or praise Xhaka. They're very different players. Xhaka at times would pull into the left back position when Zinchenko's going forward. He would hug the touchline so Martinelli could be narrow. Obviously, he's more of an organic sort of central midfielder, whether it was when he was playing slightly deep or more as an advanced role last season. There is a direct contrast as to why we're kind of struggling in that midfield. And even sometimes, you said it when we spoke on my stream last time, I said that I actually think Kai Havertz has done okay. Odegaard is getting back to form and Declan Rice is Declan Rice. But it does feel like something is missing. Like even when Smith Rowe came off the bench, the link-up play with him and Odegaard was a lot better. So I don't think Havertz in the 8. I think right now he looks comfortable there, but I don't think that's the long-term solution. So when you're kind of what we're discussing on the left, when we've hit a bit of a brick wall on the right, when we're not scoring goals, when we've probably dropped off a cliff a bit defensively, this is where we're at, really and truly, And I think Odegaard's come back into form like a few weeks ago, really. Like I think everyone was onto him when he was kind of not at form. But yeah, I think Odegaard needs help. He's dropping far too deep, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Man.
I agree
Yeah.
with that. I feel like just because Odegaard can do it doesn't mean that that's where he should be. I think that's why like I'm apprehensive to really go in on Odegaard, because people are like, oh, he's not playing well, he's not doing this, he's not doing that. I'm like, I genuinely don't think you guys understand like the type of role he's had to adjust to, just to, I hate to use this word, but accommodate Havertz a little bit. So Havertz could be higher. So Havertz doesn't have to be involved in build up. Our number 10 / number 8 is dropping deeper to support Declan Rice. And I just feel like there's a lot of players being asked to do things that don't necessarily suit them, and we're not getting payoff in the other direction. And so I don't necessarily feel like, I know people want to make very like big generalized conclusions based on like the games that we've played. I don't think Rice is unable to play the lone 6 by himself. I don't think the whole reason why we're not as good in the midfield is because Thomas Partey is not there. I think Arsenal gambled on Havertz and it took away the balance of midfield. And I could see a scenario where it is Rice and Odegaard and somebody like, let's say, Bruno G or even Paquetá, and we'd be in a much different, we'd be able to talk about Declan Rice as a lone pivot, because you literally just need another midfielder in there. And we don't have one. We have Havertz. I think people are overthinking it. They want to be like, I see people saying, well, Rice just has to play the 8. He'll never be able to play a lone 6 at Arsenal. I'm like, of course he can.
Very simplistic to look at
Yeah.
it like that, man.
Yeah, of course he can. Like, of course he can. And like, he's only 25 years old. It took Thomas Partey a while to, perfect that lone six position. It's not easy. I feel like people forget Thomas Partey came in as like a box to box, and Arteta like modified the position so that he could play in that lone six role, and he's great at it. But I feel like there's a lot of conclusions being come to around Rice because I feel like we constantly need somebody that's like the main issue, if that makes sense. Like 1 minute it's Odegaard is the main issue, now it's Rice, before it was Havertz. I don't think one player is ever really the issue. I feel like Arsenal just got the midfield balance wrong, you know?
Yeah. And right now it's like we're struggling to complement. Like football's about complementing. Naturally, if Odegaard's dropping deep, dropping really deep, you kind of kill that Saka partnership. You kill his link up play with Jesus. You kill really out Odegaard presses. I think Arsenal fans, we need to kind of move away from just a fixated midfield three. I think there's been times where you've seen Rice play as a lone six and two rotated eights. You've seen a pivot and a 10. And we just need better options. Life would be very boring if we ate the same meal day in, day out. We need players that are multifunctional. Rice can play as an 8. Is he going to have to learn the eye of the needle pass? 100%. He's going to have to kind of add that to his game, which Partey and Jorginho are a bit better than him at. But can we afford to let Rice be that? Because if he runs, he's like the handbrake of our team. If he runs further forward, which his metrics in the final third have got a lot better, who's behind him? If Jorginho's there, then fair enough. And as much as I like Jorginho, he kind of lacks in terms of athleticism. I actually think the bigger game Jorginho is sorted in. Kai Havertz isn't going to pick up the slack where Rice is concerned. So it's almost had to be delayed, really, man. So yeah, it would have been lovely to have had two central midfielders in the summer, or maybe I've got someone that kind of is more aligned to what Xhaka was doing as opposed to Havertz, if we was going to sign Havertz anyways. And this is what I mean by, I think like we've kind of created certain issues of our own, really and truly. We're probably trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, there's no in between with Havertz. Just like Arteta is either going to look like a genius or an idiot, dependent on what Kai Havertz does in however long he spends at Arsenal Football Club. So we'll have to see, man.
And the thing is like, I feel like a lot of the Rice versus Thomas Partey has come from certain fans being upset that, maybe some people were wanting to move on from Thomas Partey. I know I was one of them in the summer where I was like, yeah, I think we should be looking beyond this guy now, not because he's not good, but because we can't rely upon him. And no matter how you feel about Thomas Partey, if you think he's damn near Rodri, or you think whatever, or he's just better than Declan Rice, he's in his 30s. So we do need to be able to envision a midfield without him. And so in the short term, he's probably the best option. He's a great player, but we cannot be building a midfield around him. And there are elite midfields that exist in Europe that don't include Thomas Partey in them. So I feel like it's like if we don't have him, it'll fall apart. I do think that we could add another player into this midfield, whether that's Zubimendi or, whoever, and have a really balanced midfield and move on. Because that's kind of where my mind is now. Like, I'm just kind of like, okay, well, yeah, in the short term, of course, we're going to need him. But this idea that like Arsenal cannot exist without this player is like, of course it can. Why are other midfields able to function? They don't have a Thomas Partey. Thomas Partey is also a unicorn. And I've said this so many times too. It's like building your midfield around somebody where they have such a special skill set that you can't really replicate that with another player. You have to find other solutions. You have to. I've never seen another player on the market like Thomas Partey. Have you? I don't feel like there is any.
All depends what you're looking for. Is there people able to play as a 6 or a box-to-box role? Yeah, really and truly. I wouldn't quite say Partey is a unicorn, but he's a quality player, man. Like I just think
like he is.
Yeah, quality player, top player, but I wouldn't quite say unicorn. I think the issue with Partey is like, if Arteta knew, I think Arteta's hand was kind of forced. Xhaka made clear, I've had a great time, I want to leave. We haven't replaced that midfield properly, and we knew there was going to be teething issues. So if you consider that, considering Odegaard and Martinelli, it was very volatile that they were going to keep scoring goals. Mikel Arteta said himself what we did in terms of scoring goals was a bit of an anomaly. We've kind of making things harder for ourselves than need be. Yes, if everyone's fit, we might play a bit better, but let's be honest, up until we got to about December where it really went off a cliff, there was concerns, but for all our concerns, we was ticking along. It's kind of more being highlighted now. So has Arteta necessarily been a bit naive? Has he not replaced certain things? Maybe, and he's going to have to face the music in that regards, really and truly. And I would have loved to have been sat here with you in January and spoke about maybe a midfielder or two, a winger or a striker, but we was briefed from the club, from what the rumors are
Mhm.
saying, that, there's no money to spend. So it kind of is what it is. And you could argue earlier on in the season when Partey was playing as a right back, I don't agree with it. I think when you was looking at the games, it weren't a conventional right back. You could argue that Mikel Arteta kind of knew, regardless of what I want to try, I have to accommodate Thomas Partey. And now, obviously, that
Mhm.
resulted in Gabriel being dropped and certain other things. Was that the right or the wrong thing to do? We'll have to ask Mikel Arteta if we could one day, but here we are, man, really. And I would have loved to have kept Granit, if I'm honest with you, if we weren't going to bring in a like-for-like replacement or an enhancer. But we're at where we're at now, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think some people are asking what would be the right player. I think both of us kind of agree on Zubamendi. Actually retweeted a little write up on him that Xabi Alonso, like what he said about Zubamendi. And I've said this like a million times. I saw your super chat. I'm going to put it up. Don't worry. I see it. He basically the kind of things that Zubamendi does, I don't think really shows up in the stats, but he's kind of like has that Jorginho-esque thing, but he can do a little bit more. Like he can evade pressure. He knows what to do before he gets the ball, like all those types of things. Like I feel like that's pretty much like I don't want to say it's done, but I would say like I could see him coming to Arsenal in the summer. We've been heavily linked and people have been talking about a pre-agreement and stuff like that. How likely do you feel like it is that Arsenal will get Zubamendi in? Do you feel like Barcelona are still probably sneaking around, or do you think Arsenal may have a little bit of like a Declan Rice type of agreement with Zubamendi from now?
I mean, anything could be in the talk, but until a man's holding a shirt and saying I watched Arsenal when I was growing up, anything can happen, really and truly. I'd like until he's holding a shirt, I don't know. Clearly, there's a level of interest in the same way
Mhm.
Onana and Douglas Luiz, because all the credible journalists speak about that. Obviously, as you said, he's like there's Jorginho similarities, and that could maybe unlock Rice. Obviously, he's from the same, he's Spanish, let alone from the same region of Spain as
Mhm.
obviously Arteta. I don't want to get 2 and 2 and get a million, but there must have been some sort of conversation when we loaned out Tierney, maybe about him. So there probably is a level of interest. I hope there's a pre-agreement. I hope Arteta's putting the sweeteners out and talking to him on the
Me
WhatsApp
too.
and things. But just until he's holding the shirt, until I see, our fans tracking flights, it is what it is. And as you said, everybody seems to, I mean, everybody wants good players in it, but he's been linked with Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Arsenal, Manchester United, Aston Villa, Bilbao. Until he's holding the shirt, I'm not involved, man. I don't know anything until he's holding the shirt. I
See,
don't know.
Walter says,
Welcome, though.
See, Walter says, Mr. Watts, Charles Watts says he doesn't think there's any pre-agreement with Zubamendi. MM says Kimmich, João Neves, and De Jong should be top priority. You guys know how I feel about Frankie De Jong. Like, sell everybody and bring him in. Like, I don't care. Jacob says, I think we do get him in the summer. And so, yeah,
Hope
like,
so.
I hope so as well. And I agree with you. I think you'll have a hard time keeping him from Barcelona because I know Xavi has spoken about him. He's the next Busquets. Like they've already labeled him that. So it's going to be difficult to get him out of Spain. I feel like Xabi Alonso will end up at Bayern. And if that's the case, Zubamendi could end up there as well. I don't think he'll go there and play under Tuchel, but I could see him going there and playing under Xabi. And then you have Arteta, so hopefully Arteta's, relationship with Real Sociedad and, being from the same place, San Sebastian, that will help us out. So we need to talk about Emil Smith Rowe as well.
Yes. Let's go. What we talking about? I'll take it.
Absolute
Let me hear
nonsense.
you talk about Smith Rowe. Go on.
Okay, so obviously we had the game against Crystal Palace, and don't get too excited.
I'm not getting excited. I'm listening.
No, yeah, you're
I'm
getting a little
attentive.
excited. Relax.
I'm very
You're
attentive.
just like everyone else that got very excited about a 20-minute cameo where he did a couple of little turns,
Bro,
half turns with the ball.
you can
This
only
is so much better
you
than
can
what
only play
Havertz
what's in
could
front of
do.
you and take your chances.
Uh,
As you said, our number 10.
Okay, our number 10. Okay, so what did you make of his cameo against Crystal Palace? I felt like there was a lot of stock placed in a 20-minute cameo at the end of a game against Crystal Palace where they were dead, but you take positives where you can. What did you think about his cameo, and would that be enough for you to start him against Nottingham Forest?
In relation to starting against Nottingham Forest, I'm conflicted because when I think about the opposition, and I ain't really got a leg to stand on, I'm inclined to if Partey is not fit, inclined to probably start Kai Havertz just because of what he could probably give us in terms of winning fouls and things like that. I'm by no means saying he needs to play. A part of me wants to play Jorginho, but if it's one of those crazy evening Premier League games, that's not a strength of Jorginho's. I think Smith Rowe, you can only play what's in front of you, innit? You've been fit for a couple of weeks. You got 2 minutes against Liverpool. You got an extended run against Crystal Palace of
Not too
sorts. And you did what you could. I think the bar is on the floor because, he did everything Kai Havertz didn't. He wanted to get on the ball. He's turning. I do think, he was making a third man runs. I think Odegaard, who was playing great anyway, he's got a lot more joy. I actually feel when Jorginho, Smith Rowe were on the pitch, we saw a lot more of the game open up really and truly. So at the end of the day, take your chances. Do I think Smith Rowe has played his way into the team against Nottingham Forest? Probably not. I still imagine Kai Havertz will start. But I think it was an encouraging 20 minutes, really and truly. Just take your chances if you get more of them. And I would like to see a bit something different in midfield, if I'm honest with you, man, because at least Smith Rowe is a bit more what we expect at Arsenal. He wants to win, he wants to get onto the ball. I'm not trying to hate on Kai Havertz, but from what you've just shown yourself to be, you're not really one of those midfielders, man. So, yeah, big up Emil, man.
That you said I skipped your super chat. I did not. I see it getting out of my club this January. That's the thing about super chats. I have to put them up because you guys pay for it. But that is so mean. It's so mean. It's mean even for me, and everybody knows how I feel about it.
Harsh, man. Yeah. Well, he's not wrong, but big up Eddie, but he didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve that.
He did, but thank you so much for your super chat. I do really appreciate it. It gave me a chuckle, the chuckle that I needed this morning. Listen, Emil, here's the thing: is even though people think that I hate Emil, I don't. I just think
no, you don't. You compared him to Jack Grealish 2 years ago. I think he was on the right trajectory there.
Yeah, but even comparing Jack Grealish of now to Jack Grealish 2 years ago, those are two completely different players as well. So it means absolutely nothing. But listen, I think Emil Smith Rowe does need like a run of games. Really? I feel like, yeah, I'm not a hater. The thing is, like, I just keep it absolutely 100. People don't like to hear the whole truth. They just want to hear what they want to hear. They want to hear Emil's gonna make it. He's amazing. Emil and Saka, they're gonna do their things. Pop them over on the right center mid. Have them overlap. It's gonna work. Yeah, I hear those things. I do, and I agree with some of it. But I just don't see how you can actually gauge whether or not Emil Smith Rowe can have a long-term future at Arsenal or whether or not he is the same player of 2 years ago without a run of games. I don't see how you can see it. 2 minutes here against Liverpool, which I thought was pathetic. I don't know why Arteta did that. It was wrong. I wouldn't even went out there. If I was Emil, I would have said, no thanks.
Same to Trossard as well, really.
Yeah, I was like, what is this? But 20 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 5 minutes there. I want to see you from the start because we all know that game state is a big part of why certain players look really good and others don't. Sometimes I feel like there's a lot of emphasis on like the ends of games where we get like a couple of additional goals or we're chasing or the other team has already given up and we score a couple of goals and then it's like, oh, well, we were so open. We look so much better.
I'm like, well, yeah, Smith Rowe did show he can be a super sub when he had that great season as well. I'm just throwing that out there for you.
Oh my goodness. Let me land. I'm agreeing with you.
I'm aiding your point.
Listen,
squad, you need a squad in that.
Yeah, we do need a squad, but I would like to see Emil start from the beginning because I think it's hard to really gauge whether or not the player is actually there or not if they're not playing from the beginning. And Havertz is because I'm not a hater. People think I'm a hater. I'm not.
Emil, we won.
Okay, but I think he needs a run of games. We saw, at the beginning of the season, I think when Arteta kind of peeped that maybe Havertz wasn't working out the way that he wanted it to. Havertz got like the first 4 or 5 games of the season. And then when we played against Everton, Fabio played them. He also played against Spurs. And then we didn't see him anymore. I think he got like a little injury or something like that. You need a run of games. You just do, and I don't think Emil is, people make too much of a fuss about the duels. I don't look at how many lightweight players are in the Premier League that play in advanced positions. It's fine. Emil's not going to collapse or out of possession stats or whatever. I feel like people make too much of a big deal about it. I would love to see him start against Nottingham Forest. I just don't think not having Havertz in there to win a duel or two is going to collapse the game. I just don't think it's that deep. I don't, you know? I would love to see it. I would love to see it. Now whether or not he gets it, I don't think he will. I think Jorginho's in front of him and Havertz is in front of him. But if Arteta is really about standing on business, he'll just give him a run of games. You know, why not? I just don't see if you have a player in your team that you're not willing to start multiple games in a row and try something different. I don't know why they're here. You know, it's Arsenal. Shouldn't be afraid to play him. That's why I'm always an advocate for just put Fabio in. Like, if he sink or swim, you know, but this whole like, we see him for 5 minutes here, we see him for 10 minutes there. It's not enough. It's not enough. And I feel like he can score goals, but I feel like he needs to get that first one. And he's not going to get it if he doesn't get the playing time. So I would love to see Emil maybe start against Forest. I don't think it'll happen, but I would love to see it. You know, I would love to see it. Or Jorginho.
And that's where our midfield is quite peculiar, man. Because I agree with you with Smith Rowe. To be honest, banter aside, let's be honest, he's fighting for his career, really. And had him and Fabio Vieira been able to, I know they've had their injuries. Had they been able to stay fit when Kai was having his inconsistencies, it might be very different, really. I do think Smith Rowe is fighting for his future. I do think he's someone that the club won't force out, but could listen to offers. I think he's going to have 2 years left on his deal and be 24. And that's where I'm a bit uneasy about our midfield, because I feel there's every logic with starting Havertz, even though I'm not convinced on the player yet. I think there's every logic with Smith Rowe getting a run there, or Jorginho. Bit different, but if Partey was fit, but then you don't know if Partey is going to be there. And this is what I mean when I said on your stream where there's more questions than answers where our midfield's concerned. I think whatever everyone says about our attackers and our defenders, not saying they can't be improved and there's no question marks, they're okay. The midfield is where there's questions. And last time I checked, Arteta, Edu, were you not central midfielders? We need to address this. And part of me feels we're not going to get to that next level. We're not going to improve better defensively and improve in the final third until we really address that midfield. If we had Declan Rice, another number 6, another 8, and an 8, and then you've got these Fabio, Smith Rowe, Havertz, all these multifunctional guys we're living, really. And when you go back to the summer, there was obviously what links and what actually happens are very different things. I'm inclined to believe we signed 2 midfielders because Kai's playing there and we had Rice, but we was linked with Lavia and Zubamendi and all these guys, regardless of Rice. So I did kind of assume, look at this guy, I voted deluded, was late. There's a campaign against me. I wasn't late. She got her coffee. No one could prove any different. You gonna believe me or her?
Hello, Alex.
This is biased.
I see you there.
Pick him up. He hated on Martinelli. You hated on Smith Rowe.
How did he? Alex did not hate on Smith Rowe. Didn't he just do a video about?
I got agendas to run, man.
He literally just did a video about how Emil's gonna save us this season.
Another one.
Shout out to Alex.
With you to the end, man. Now, big up different.
You guys subscribe to the Different Knock. It's a really, really good channel. Good analysis. Every time I see like one of the little thumbnails, I'm like, I have to watch this because I need to know what you're saying.
Content creator and a good
very,
guy.
very quality. Yeah. We've had Alex on the channel. I know he's been on your channel as well. Shout out to Alex for sure. But listen, Emil, I would love for you to start against Nottingham Forest. If you don't, hopefully you get some playing time. What did
you say? Sorry, cracked up. What did you say about Smith Rowe?
You're taking this to the nth degree, but it's literally not going to end well for you.
Listen, I've just said I think it ends for Smith Rowe in the summer. If it does, he goes somewhere and does amazing. But right now, I'm living.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think a lot of people have the same opinion that he could help us for now, for sure. Like Arteta needs to get the most out of what he has, and this is the squad that he built. And so he needs to get the most out of what he has and find a way to get a little bit out of Emil, find a way to, manage Thomas Partey so we can get 10, 15, 20 games from him. But when we get to the summer, I'm expecting a clear out. I'm expecting some of these guys to pack it up.
End of the road for a lot of men, but you just never know with life, man. A lot of them are playing for their seasons. Like, Ramsdale's fighting for his future, Smith Rowe, Reece Nelson, Eddie Nketiah. Obviously, we're not going to sell all of these English lads, but it looks like it could go either way, essentially, especially because Smith Rowe's got 2 years left on his deal. And that's why, it'd be nice if, he performs. So at least if he's going to be sold, he's back to that previous Smith Rowe. Or I didn't want him, as we spoke about, I didn't want him to go to West Ham on loan. I think he's at that stage. He either plays here or he's sold. And I think we needed to keep a body for him. But if he went out on loan and showed a little bit of the Smith Rowe that he showed previously, we're getting more money, man. No, that's not nice, Matt, man.
Listen, no, DG will be able to come back, but he's always late. And he was late this time, not
I
because he
weren't
was
late.
trying to find a charger, but because he was on someone else's channel.
I weren't late.
Disrespect. The
I weren't late.
disrespect that's here is ridiculous. It's disrespectful, man.
Bamian settings, but I weren't late.
Definitely Aubameyang settings. Lucas says Nelson and Eddie are not fighting for anything. They're comfortable. It's interesting because I feel like Ramsdale and Smith Rowe will be the ones to go, but I feel like there's every chance that Nketiah and Nelson will stay for some reason. I feel like it almost should be the opposite, even though I understand that like Ramsdale and Emil Smith Rowe are probably the more talented, more attractive players in the
Facts.
market. I feel like if there's anybody that will stay, it'll be Eddie and Nelson, and Smith Rowe and Ramsdale will go. Christian says ESR carries the rock and has eye for goal, stays fit, and he can take left center mid. And that's all. That's to me, it's all about whether or not he can stay fit, which he hasn't been able to. But if you talk about injury prone players and say that maybe they don't have a future, you get slandered out here. So I don't know. Somebody was like, "Oh, you better keep the same energy that you have with Tierney with everybody else." I'm like, I do. I do. I keep
Unfortunately, he's injured again. Big up Tierney, though. That's my guy.
Listen, when people were just a couple of days ago, because Zinchenko didn't, was bad defensively, and we didn't have Tommy, and Kivior's playing bad. This is why we should have kept Tierney. To do what? To do what? I
To
love
be fair,
Tierney.
he was fit for the majority of last season, even though I agree with you. I'm just being devil's advocate here.
Did you watch him play? When he did play, what did he do? Watching
Yeah,
Tierney
I mean, he's made
to the
some
inverted
mistakes.
role
I
was
understand. I
shocking.
think, go on. I think a bit like what we kind of spoke about with Granit Xhaka. I think rightly so. Tini, Xhaka wanted to try a new experience. Tini said, you know what, Gaffer, when you are playing me, you're asking me to be inverted. There's a bit like asking an elephant to climb a tree. I'm behind of everyone in the pecking order. Tomiyasu, Zinchenko, Timber, and I probably missed out another one. I want to keep it moving. I think Arteta would have kept him and stayed as part of the squad. And, he probably still wouldn't have got that much game time in hindsight, but it could have just given us something. It could help us close out games off the bench, it could help us chase leads. And I would have definitely loved to have had him specifically against West Ham and obviously Liverpool. But as you said, don't know if Donny would have been fit really. And again, the best quality you can have is being available, and you never quite feel that with Tierney. So yeah, I think people need to kind of, the way we're going as a football club, I know we're always going to fall in love with footballers, but whether it's Smith Rowe, whether it's Tierney, one day we might be looking at some other players. Probably need to understand that if you're not adapting and playing to a certain level, you might get left behind, man.
I agree with that. And the thing is like somebody said, Lucas was saying that Tierney had one good game last season against Brentford. I remember that game. That to me, besides Fulham away, that was our best away display from start to finish. We beat them 3-0. It was easy. I know some people were like, "Oh, it's because everybody was sad that the Queen died." I'm like, no, I just think we played them
You
off
don't
guard.
reckon Chelsea away as well?
I didn't think we scored enough goals. I think we should
We
have
were
whooped them.
perfect at it. Even
I don't
our
even
man
think we,
Zinchenko, he was perfect in that
I
game. But
don't know.
Brentford, you know what? Brentford was a great performance from us.
Yeah,
That was
because back then, remember, like
Brentford
Brentford this
won.
season is different than Brentford last season. Last
Facts.
season, Brentford were taking points off of the top
We
teams
made them
like
look very
Kansas.
average.
Exactly. And so, especially because of what happened the season prior, where it was like the first game of the season we played against them, and
Don't remind
there was
me.
like there was this whole thing about how Brentford were going to get us again. And from minute 1 to minute 90, I thought we were perfect. It was also the game that Ethan Noweri made his debut. It was great. And Fabio Vieira and Tierney both started that game. They both started that game, and
Fabio
they
did well
played.
that game.
Yeah, and that's I don't ever really believe in this idea that like we can't rotate and play with players that don't necessarily like they're not 100% like the players that they're replacing. Tierney was fine in that game, but I feel like as time has gone on, because like if we're not playing to the best of our abilities and we don't really have like Arteta's not what's the word, flexible, then it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so we get more and more specific as time has gone on. And as the season went on, Tierney was asked to be more inverted and play more like Zinchenko than he did
And
in
it's
that
not him.
Brentford game.
That's where
Yeah,
Timber comes in, because he's
yeah,
obviously he's not as good in the final third or in midfield as Zinchenko, because he come up as a defender, but there's not too much of a drop off. Obviously, strong 1v1. That's the one injury I do have sympathy for Mikel Arteta with, the Timber one. I do think that changes the
yeah.
dynamics of things, but it just feels like, and I'm sure you probably feel like this making content, it does kind of feel under Arteta, if there was one negative, it kind of feels sometimes year on year out we're talking about the same things very
Yep.
very much.
It's
So
deja vu.
exactly. So how many times are you going to keep doing the same thing and expect different results? I don't know.
Lucas says Fabio wasn't even that good. It didn't matter because the team functioned.
Hard,
That's harsh. But
hard.
I get what you're saying. He scored a goal and it wasn't like he set the world alight. But again, you can float players that aren't as good when you're playing to the best of your abilities and your tactics are not set up against that player. But again, when you ask players to do things that they don't do well, it doesn't work, you know? But this is also why I'm like, Arteta can use his bench a little bit more, but he doesn't. I saw a lot of, times last season where we had Trossard in instead of somebody else, or, Tierney was in. He played a lot of those games at the beginning of the season because Zinchenko wasn't available. So I know Tierney could play with us, but as Arteta got more obsessed with this inversion shit, it was like Tierney looked worse and worse. And I was like, you're going to have to go. You're gonna have to go because I'm not watching you invert anymore because it's a train wreck. Watching Tierney do that was like, oh my
He
goodness.
gave it a good goal, but you just ain't got it in your locker, unfortunately,
He
man.
he doesn't, he doesn't. Marco says, is Tierney injured again? He came off
Yeah,
in the
allegedly.
last Sociedad game. Yeah. So like they said up to a month maybe he could be out. And so obviously you don't want to see that, you know.
Get well soon, man.
Yeah, you definitely want to see Tierney play games because again, this is also Arsenal want to be able to sell this player, hopefully, and you can't sell him if he's always injured. Oh, that's somebody else we didn't talk about. Nuno. Marseille want to buy him, but Nottingham Forest are trying to figure out if they want to keep him or not. I'm like, Nottingham Forest, you don't even use him. Let him go. Let us get the cash, man. Like, seriously. Nuno Tavares, I'm sorry, but like seeing that video pop up again too on my timeline was like, why are we going back here? I tried to erase that from my memory. What a yo. I'm hoping that
I
Marseille
feel
want
like we
to
have some weird moments in the dressing rooms at our
yeah.
club with what goes online, even a certain centre half. I don't want to, Saliba, shout to you, but we do some crazy things. I mean, when you read the stuff around Tavares and it says there's no recall option on the
Yeah.
deal, like it kind of comes a bit amateuristic. If I'm Arsenal, maybe we just simply didn't care. We just wanted him to get out. Obviously, Nottingham Forest have changed their manager from Cooper to Nuno Espirito Santo. He might have plans, and to be fair with you, even if he doesn't have plans for Nuno and he just wants to keep him as a body, they're within their rights. But that's where we're kind of at their mercy. I think every Arsenal fan is kind of short and sweet with Tavares in it. Bye bye. Like, got no hate for you, but it's okay. It didn't work out. Let's go.
I'll always remember that as bad as Nuno was, he still scored against United.
Yeah, no, big him up for that. Big him up for that. It's not been the thing, in it. Like, big up Tavares, but there was a point where you couldn't travel away from home with this guy. You just, anytime you've got a fullback, and I don't get it twisted, I know the modern day develops, but I remember doing a live stream when Tavares signed. Now, if I hear a fullback, they can talk about how they are in the final third, but I want to hear, I like to defend. I'm strong 1v1. I'm this, I'm that, and the third. He's talking about, I like to shoot with my right foot. I said it then. This is a dud. This is wrong. Even Arteta must have known, because when he signed, he said this was an analytical signing. He was doing the analytics. It's not making sense. And I was rooting for him. He's a fullback. He's a failed winger like me playing fullback. I was rooting for him, but he's just not it, man. It's just not it.
I'm glad you said that because at least because you actually play the position. So when I say it, it sounds like I'm hating, but I'm like, a lot of these fullbacks be failed wingers, and that's fine.
They
It's
are.
okay. But if you don't develop the defensive part of your game, you're just a wing back and you're so limited.
And
You're
people
so
overrated his,
limited.
his his play in the final third as well, Jess. Like, obviously, you look at Tavares, he's significantly better in the opponent's half. He's a bit wild, but there's no point having all this pace and all this stuff if you're not passing when you need to pass, shooting when you need to shoot. I'm sure some of us will remember, I think we actually beat Chelsea. We played Chelsea with Nuno Tavares. I could be wrong, but he had several options and then he went for a shot. Like, he just don't have it in his locker, man. I hope he does. I want to be proven wrong, because it means we've got options, but it's just fantastic athlete, but no brain. Forget about it. Like,
Yeah. I don't think Alex tweeted it. I think he retweeted it, but somebody put out a tweet and it was like the funniest thing. They were like, we went to Anfield with Nuno Tavares in a dream. And I was like, that is so true because I remember that game where we lost like 4-0. I was like, That's when I wrote off Nuno and
Are we
Sambi,
forgetting Crystal Palace?
unfortunately. Yeah.
Are we forgetting Crystal Palace? Are we forgetting, the Nottingham Forest? I'm sure in the FA Cup, there's been several.
When
Like
Arteta took him off, like, in the 25th minute, oh my goodness.
he's a liability, and I'm not trying to disrespect him, but you are a liability in the Arsenal
He was
team.
wild, but I'm hoping that Marseille want to buy him and that Nottingham Forest are willing to let him go, but we kind of took this out of our own hands, and I still don't really understand why we didn't just sell him to Marseille when he was there. I guess he tore his jaws there. Like, everywhere he goes, like, he has problems, but it would have been nice to just, to sell him then. Last but not least, before we get out of here, I thought this was an interesting comment. Arteta should improve the forwards we have. Why the big drop off in form from last season?
Facts.
The players that Saka and Martinelli are being compared to, I really need them to start scoring because I'm shocked. Like, I'm just like, the drop off in terms of, like, Martinelli is on the cusp of being world class and Saka's one of the best right wingers, to the players that they're being compared to now and treated like. But is it Arteta, or is it the players are not as good as we thought?
I think it's both. I think I wouldn't say it's not as good as we thought, but you're putting on normal expectations on these young players' shoulders, not as a cop out. They need to be surrounded by quality. You look at someone like Phil Foden. If City are not living or dying by his performances, as great as he is for a large part of our season, and even now to a degree, if Saka and Martinelli are not doing the business, we're in trouble. Now, obviously, both of these players have to take accountability for their own form, really. But a lot of it has to be down to Arteta. He says it's my job to maximize stuff. He said it was an anomaly that they all scored. We kind of spoke about earlier in your stream about, again, Martinelli has to take accountability, but there has to be a correlation between what Granit Xhaka was doing, Martinelli being asked to hug the touchline, and that's why Crystal Palace was a breath of fresh air. We spoke about it on our stream. He's like, for me, anyways, Martinelli is so much better when the ball's played in behind, doesn't have too much time to think, and there's that kind of clarity. He's a bit of a headless chicken, and it was kind of Martinelli at old. So indirectly, everything good and bad is the manager's fault in it. So he's going to have to arrest that, really, because no matter what we say, obviously we should still be having a conversation about signing a striker, but Martinelli, Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Jesus, Trossard, should goals or a lack of goals really be a big issue for us? Now, obviously, these players need to find their shooting boots, but a lot of teams would bite your arm off just for these players.
I agree.
Should this really be an issue as much as it is?
I agree with that. Like, when I feel like everything is just too simplistic. Like, when we talk about our players and the analysis around our players, absolutely. Do they have to do better? Yeah, of course they do. I think Martinelli still has a little bit of that issue of, like, not looking up. Saka is a little bit predictable. I'd like him to go sometimes to the inside, sometimes to the outside. That being said, when everybody drops off at the same time, I have to look at the way that we're playing. And I just
Exactly.
don't, yeah, they need to be more central. I feel like both Saka and Martinelli are not traditional touchline wingers. So you can't play them as such. You have got to get them some support out on the wings. You have to allow them to come more central and get closer together. And I made this point on the other day. It's like, I just felt like I have not seen Saka and Martinelli connect at all this season in terms of, like,
I swear
Martinelli
they used to switch
crosses.
play for each other last year. I might be
Yeah,
making that up,
no,
but
you're not.
I'm
You're
pretty
not.
sure.
They used to do that, and, like, Martinelli would assist Saka and Saka would assist Martinelli. We're not seeing that this season. Like, somebody pulled up the stat. I think Martinelli has assisted Saka once this season. That's it. And that was, like, back in October or something like that. So they're not connecting. The center forward is isolated away from the wingers. Last season we saw Jesus just kind of popping up everywhere, supporting and creating overloads in different positions. They're not doing that anymore. And so Arteta needs to let the handbrake go and be willing to take a little bit more of a risk. Maybe that'll come when he has somebody like Thomas Partey available, because our midfield will be stronger. Maybe he'll be willing to allow more numbers forward and allow the players to get closer together, but he cannot be so stubborn. My biggest fear is that because he's kind of like a stubborn guy, I feel like after 4.5 years, we can say that the only time he'll change is when it's too late, and when I mean too late, it's like next season when he's like in 8th or some shit. I need him to change that shit now, because the players, they don't, attack wise, they just don't look good enough. And I think they're better than what they're showing, even though I still feel
100%.
like we need to buy other players. you know, clearly.
100%. But it's again, I think if we want to be this team, which we're a long way away from that, can go the distance in the Premier League, obviously the Champions League, and compete in all the cups, we need squad depth. Arteta himself said we need to be a team that scores 100 goals. Are we going to, even if we get Osimhen, Vlahovic, Tony, all these guys, are they going to score it alone? So we need to get some more out of the team. And I do think Mikel Arteta would like another defender, would like a central midfielder, would like a striker. And obviously we didn't get none of these players. But where you look at Rafinha, Mudryk, thank the Lord, at this moment in time, and actually Pedro Neto, it's like he's looking for that explosive kind of winger. And we spoke about it on your stream last time, where you look at the whole team underperforming until we played Palace. I do think genuinely, if he had another winger, maybe Martinelli comes out of the team like you saw for Trossard a lot sooner. Maybe Saka is potentially dropped, because as much as Arteta says he likes Reece Nelson, and I'm not saying he doesn't, at a point he's only played 87 minutes in the Premier League. Now we've got 19, 20, 21 games.
Exactly.
It's a madness.
It really is. So I know some of you guys have just joined, but we are going to go ahead and get out of here. We did speak about like pretty much everything. Callum Wilson, Partey coming back, Rice, is he hindering us? Emil Smith Rowe, the whole gamut. So if you guys want to go back and watch it after and like start from the beginning, that's what I would do. Listen, me and Femi are going to record a little bit later today and release on Patreon for our Friday vibes. So if you guys are a part of the Patreon community, the Cannon Club, you guys can watch that there. Otherwise, there will be another Cannon Club episode with more of us on Monday, because we don't play until Tuesday, and then we're going to be live on Wednesday here on the channel. So loads of content coming. I know I wasn't here yesterday, but life be life in y'all. Life be life in, but it almost took me out yesterday. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all, so I couldn't come on yesterday, but feeling much better today. DG, let everybody know where they can follow you and all that kind of stuff. What do you have going on?
I mean, well, after this, we're obviously going to record another thing talking about the same thing. But in relation to myself, just type in Deluded Gooner and you check out my videos. Follow me on all the socials, Deluded Gooner04. You can see me probably trolling, Alex and Jess and the rest of them, especially when Smith Rowe does half decent. And appreciate you for having me and everyone that's listening. But yeah, that's how you can find me, man.
Perfect. Make sure you guys subscribe, set your notifications, and like all of DG's videos. Also, make sure you go to Alex's channel too, The Different Knock. He's good as well. And yeah, we will see you guys on the next one. Like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. You guys set your notifications so you don't forget. Bye, guys.